Well, it's an absolute privilege once again to have Senator Alex Antic on the Macquarie Street Political Podcast. Alex, welcome.
Thanks, Lyle. It's great to be here, and wish I could be there with you, but I'm here in the I was going to say madhouse. I won't say madhouse. The bubble, the Canberra bubble.
So, that's right. You're at Senate estimates. You're at Senate estimates in Canberra. Good on you.
Sure. It's been all week, and we're still going, and it's been some interesting stuff as always. But in amongst the drudgery of Senate estimates, but it's always a good chance to get in there and drill into the, what's really going on under the surface. So yeah, we've been doing our best.
Fantastic. We're going to ask you about some of that in a moment. But I guess one of the key reasons I wanted to talk to you today was the speech you gave last week in the Senate about the World Economic Forum. We've all heard of Klaus Schwab. We see these people flying on their private jets to Davos every year. But I think since he sort of coined that term, the Great Reset, we've been really worried. Now you went into the Senate and sort of blew the whistle on their agenda. Just tell us a bit about why you did that.
Well, yeah, look, I suppose. I mean, I look, like you, I'm sure. I've heard that phrase, the Great Reset, for so long now. And, many months or, even a year ago, 18 months ago, I started looking into this. What does this mean? Is it just one of these rabbit holes you can go down on the internet? And, there I was surprised to learn that not only was it not a conspiracy theory, but also that Mr. Schwab, Professor Schwab, has written a book about it. And it's a book that he's sending around. He's sending to all the world leaders, and he's actively promoting it. And it really stuck with me because I thought at the beginning of COVID that, you have to, despite how bad things can be, you've got to turn this stuff into a win. And I sort of saw it as in my own mind as a way in which we would go, right, well, we've got to stop this nonsense with, destroying our economy with, this kind of relentless push towards net zero and renewables. We've got to get back to manufacturing. It'll build the cat on all of those frailties, the sovereign capacity and all this sort of stuff. Well, guess what? It turns out on the other side of the world, there were those who were talking different language, and the language of the Great Reset is really alarming to me. It's sort of steeped in this kind of authoritarian neo-Marxist language. It's sort of, if you look at what he's talking about, and I think he's written a book about this as well, is this concept of stakeholder capitalism, which is really the concept that the free market's not doing its job anymore, and that government has to intervene into the market when socially it's required to do so. But that depends on what your societal views are. And, we would have, I'm sure you and I would have very different views than some of those skirting around the fringes of the World Economic Forum as to what we would like to see for our world. So I think it's a growing issue. People are more aware of it, but I want people to be really aware of this and aware of the fact that it's not a conspiracy theory. It's real.
No, as Steve Bannon, and you've been on his show, as he would say, it's in your grill. And this Klaus Schwab, I mean, I'd never heard of the guy until I heard him saying that we need this Great Reset and you will own nothing and you will be happy. He wants to create a class of serfs who never own property because it's just too expensive, and you just rent and you're just a consumer and you'll be happy. This is some sort of Marxist communist agenda, so it seems. I mean, it seems like extreme language, but that's where they're coming from, isn't it, ideologically?
Yeah, well, it seems to be. And look, we know that it's too easy to just pluck words out and, create something that's not. But it doesn't seem to be like that in this case. This concept of you will own nothing and you will be happy, it sort of does have all the hallmarks of some of those old, I think they were sort of communist phrases I think they used to use, which were things like, don't, I think, I can't remember what they were, don't think, or, thinking sets you free, or, they're all this sort of stuff that used to float around. But they seem to have been indelibly marked on this movement, on the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. And it is alarming language. It sort of talks about, stuff that I would have thought was dead and buried at the end of the 90s with communism as it was. But, it's like Margaret Thatcher used to say, communism never sleeps, it never changes its objectives, and nor must we. And I think this is the lesson for people, is don't think this ideology has gone away. I'm not suggesting that it's, necessarily bubbling to the surface through this or through something else, but it's always there and it's never good for us. This is the ideology that, that caused so much havoc in the 20th century. And there are different ways and means of getting there. Owning nothing and being told to be happy is probably one of them, I think.
Yeah, I was alarmed when I saw that. I'd never heard of Klaus Schwab until that point. And I noticed in your speech in the Senate last week, you said that video where he said that you will own nothing and be happy has now been deleted from the World Economic Forum website. I mean, that's a bit of a tell, isn't it?
Well, I guess it is, and it caused such alarm that it was taken down. Of course, it's still out there, and about people have captured it and used it. But it's taken off their website, it's taken off their official site, and it's, I don't know. I think perhaps the language has changed a little bit. They're sort of using the terms opportunity now to reimagine and reinvent and all this sort of stuff after COVID. But the truth is, it's it's alarming language, and it's interesting to me how this always is pointed at the West. If it was really about environmental issues, we would be, and the World Economic Forum and other bodies would be putting more pressure on places like China and India, who are the greatest polluters, the greatest emitters of carbon in the world. So why is it aimed squarely at us, which has less than 1% of the world's emissions? Why are we not doing enough? Why is it us?
No, that's right.
And they do pick and choose on issues. And if you read the documentation carefully, it's alarming stuff. And I think for me, what I think is important is that people are aware of it. And I really want to know how far those tentacles go into this country and our institutions, because
I was going to ask you about that, Alex. You're there in the federal parliament. You're coming to us from Canberra right now as we speak in Parliament House. You mentioned in your speech that Klaus Schwab's objective, and I've seen these videos on YouTube of him talking about this. As you say, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's in your grill. It's in our faces. He's saying we will penetrate the cabinet. They've had this young leaders forum that the World Economic Forum has fostered. Jacinda Ardern's been on it. Macron, Justin Trudeau. You said in your speech that about half of the Trudeau cabinet are young World Economic Forum alumni. Now, these are the people who shut down the truckers' strike, froze their bank accounts, did all those really authoritarian, draconian measures against people who were, using the tools of democracy, peaceful protest to resist things that they didn't like about their governments. This is really concerning if this is what the WEF is turning out.
Yeah, I mean, actually, he said it himself. He said it, I think, at a relatively recent, it might have even been Davos this time round, I think, in January, where he talked about, I think the words he used was, we penetrate the cabinets and know that half of the Canadian cabinet are actually young global leader alumni, or, words to that effect. And that, look, I mean, on its surface, there really isn't anything wrong with people being involved with, whatever NGO or body it is. But my point is, I think we need to know. I think we need to know, how far and wide these tentacles are going, and who's associating with them. In the same way as, I mean, this is the point to be made. As a member of federal parliament, you can click right now on and I wouldn't bother because there's nothing to see, the register of interests here, and see where any particular person like myself owns a piece of land. The banking you do, if you're a member of your local golf club. And yet we don't make a provision for, let's say, I don't know, somebody being involved with the Gates Foundation or somebody being involved with the World Economic Forum. So what I'm planning to do in the new parliament is move a motion so that we add that to the register of interest, because I think, it's not that it's anything particularly about the World Economic Forum or the Gates Foundation, but I think people should know who's associating with whom, so that at least in Australia. It's a question of transparency. There may be nothing wrong with that. There may be nothing more than just, being involved or being a recipient of an award or whatever it may be. But, that's the same with banking. You might say, well, what's the problem with holding a mortgage with the National Australia Bank? Nothing. People just, public personalities and public figures who are legislators need to be more transparent than the average person.
So in terms of the tentacles here in Australia, you talked about digital identity. There's legislation before the parliament, which I believe is going to cross over into the next parliament after the election. I don't even know what this digital identity thing means, but it sounds like the social credit system that Chinese Communist Party regime has, where they, capture your biometric details and they track you and all this sort of stuff. Is that what the government that you're a part of is doing? And is this part of some agenda that's been pushed on us by the World Economic Forum? And again, not a conspiracy theory. I've heard them talk about, this whole digital movement. It's something they want to see. Where is this being driven from? Is this something that came through a Liberal Party branch meeting, or has it come from Davos?
Well, look, I don't think it's been policy that's come up through the coalition's branches. I don't think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to be a very similar format to those which are drifting out through other countries. We've seen them. I think in the UK has got one pending, or has just been passed. And really what it is, it's a pretty complicated piece of legislation. It's called the Trusted Digital Identity Bill. And it's designed to give Australians a digital identification. Now, of course, we're probably both old enough to remember the Australia card and what it what a commotion that caused back in the early 80s. And this is like the digital version of that on steroids, and that's a very bad way of describing it. But what it's designed to do is create a digital ID for you under the guise of making sure that if you go onto Facebook, you're known. You can't be an online anonymous troll and all that. So that's the discussion point. But
that
the devil's
sounds
always
fair
in the
enough.
detail.
I'm good for getting rid of the trolls.
You and I both would have our fair share of trolls, and fair enough. I don't have a problem with that aspect of it. But the thing that alarms me about all of this is the collation of data, and so what will happen is people will end up with almost a database of things they do, be it religious profiling, be it medical information, be it purchasing habits. And what happens to that data, particularly when you set the framework up? Does it just end there? Does it go elsewhere? Does it go somewhere else? It really does lend itself to the beginnings of a social credit system. And I'm pretty uncomfortable with this. I mean, I still need to get fully on top of the details before, we get across it, and it will go into the next parliament. So, but ultimately, I don't want to live in a world where I go to the shops and I go to buy a steak or whatever it may be, and I'm told my digital profile has got a flag against it because I've already bought one for the week.
So who's the minister driving this, Alex? Is it Paul Fletcher, the communications minister? Is it Attorney General?
No, I think
where does it lie?
I think this one's out of it. It probably would be cross ministerial, but I think this bill is with Minister Robert.
Robert.
And so I think there's a lot of, and at the moment, I believe it's still out for consultation. So it'll be really interesting to see.
It's not a done deal. So there's more to see. There may not be anything to it, but there's probably enough just to be concerned and to keep a watching brief on it.
Look, I think, unfortunately, this surveillance state that we're entering into, and I say state, not the state, but this state of consciousness, if you like, is sort of inevitable in a sense. But we've got to be careful with our freedom. We can't just set up frameworks and systems that allow us to be persecuted for things you might say online. You might get online and have the temerity to say that a woman is a person born as a woman biologically, and that's it. And your digital ID carries that, and then you get blocked out from getting a mortgage. Because
I want to come back to that question of what is a woman, but we started talking about the digital identity thing as segueing from the World Economic Forum. Is this something that is being driven, from a global perspective, or is that again, reading too much into it and being a little bit conspiratorial?
Oh, look, I just don't know. I don't know what the genesis of the bill is.
So
but what I would say is that, well, look, I just literally don't have those facts. But what I do know is that it's a similar format that's being rolled out across the world. And look, you would expect that things that are being done globally would go to all countries that are members of these organisations. Yeah. That in itself, I don't think is cause for alarm. I just want to know the facts and the possibilities about what this will do to our future. And we don't want to live in a society where we go anywhere, when we're even in the same section of the library as the sort of stuff that goes on in China at the moment. We must be careful with our liberty.
Absolutely. Look, I couldn't agree more. And as you say, if this is something that other countries are doing as part of something that's being driven by the likes of the World Economic Forum, which quite happily has Xi Jinping come and speak at its conferences, as it did last year in the middle of the pandemic, after we knew all about the Wuhan lab and what the CCP were up to with gain of function research. They still gave Xi Jinping a platform. So I just don't think the World Economic Forums are our friend. Alex, I know time's getting away. What is a woman? You've been asking some bureaucrats in Senate estimates. What are they telling you?
Well, not much at this stage. I've been asking far and wide. I'd just like an answer because, from where I sit, and I know from where you sit, it's a pretty simple equation, and we just can't seem to get an answer. I asked, I'm trying to think, the Workplace Gender Equality Agency that question.
That's right, Gender Equality Agency. Yeah,
that's it. Earlier in the week, and the response was, well, it could be anything the ABS and businesses want them to be, which I found quite curious. And then I've just only recently asked the Department of Health, and they've taken it on notice. So I'm just going to keep asking until someone can tell me what a woman is.
Just stop there. You asked the Department of Health, the Federal Department of Health, what a woman was, and they said they would take it on notice.
Take it on notice. They're going to take that one on notice.
Who was that person? What level of seniority was this person?
That
must be someone very senior if they're set an estimate. So.
Yeah, it was Professor Brendan Murphy who said he would take it on notice.
Professor Brendan Murphy. This is the man who was the face of the COVID pandemic response for the federal government, the former chief health officer. Is that right? He said he would take that on notice.
He would. I'll be putting that clip up later on my Facebook, Lyle. So If people can see
please,
for themselves.
everyone go to Alex's Facebook later today. We are shooting this on Wednesday, April the 6th, and some people will be watching a delayed broadcast next week. But go to Alex's Alex Antic's Facebook and watch Brendan Murphy take that on notice. That is unbelievable.
I haven't been here in this building long, Lyle, but that was one of the most extraordinary things I think that's happened in my time.
It's just inconceivable for those of us who are normal, ordinary Australians that highly paid bureaucrats at a very senior level who report to a coalition government are confused about things like this. It just goes to show, even having a Conservative government in power for 9 years, it's not easy to change the woke culture, is it? It's almost impossible. The swamp sort of rules.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, I think that's exactly the point. That, it's funny how accurate some of those episodes of Yes Minister were years and years ago. And look, it's no criticism. I mean, the bureaucracy, well, it probably should be, but I'm not going to do it today. The bureaucracy gets a life of its own. I sometimes feel like estimates is almost an inconvenience to some of the departments, that they almost have to come and justify this stuff. And they're massive, massive enterprises now. So, but look, that was a pretty simple question. From where I sit, it should be a pretty easy thing. If you're born a woman, you're a woman. And that's sort of about it. But we can't seem to get that answer out of the bureaucrats.
Yeah. Alex, there's so much more I'd love to talk about. Your time is short, but look, thank you so much for being with me on the Macquarie Street Political Podcast once again. Love to talk to you again on the other side of the federal election, which will probably be called sometime this week. But I know that you're not up for re-election. You're on a 6-year term, so you'll certainly be back in the next Parliament. Thank goodness for that you can be there. But we certainly wish you all the best as you'll be campaigning, and look forward to talking to you on the other side of it.
Thanks, Lyle. Appreciate it and love to. We'll talk again soon.
Good on you, Alex. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for that.